10. The Great Beaver Wars lasted 61 years. The Iroquois Confederacy, often known as the Five Nations, and an alliance of France with numerous Algonquian-speaking Native American tribes residing in the Ohio Country and Great Lakes regions, engaged in a series of battles beginning in 1640. One of the longest battles in the history of the continent, the fight lasted for more than 60 years until 1701. The Iroquois Confederacy launched military expeditions against rival groups including the Huron, Petun, and Erie tribes as a result of wanting to monopolize the lucrative fur trade in the area. The Great Lakes and Ohio River Valley regions, which at the time served as the primary hubs for fur trading, saw the most of the fighting. Many Native American tribes were uprooted or wiped out as a result of the conflict in the years that followed. The tribes were eventually integrated or evacuated by European colonization, but it also greatly undermined their authority and upset the existing power dynamics in the area. 9. The Anglo-Ashanti War lasted 70 years. The Anglo-Ashanti Wars, which lasted from 1823 to 1900, were a series of battles between the British Empire and the Ashanti Empire, which was based in modern-day Ghana. The wars lasted for several decades, with the three main outbreaks occurring between 1823 and 1831, 1863 and 1864, and 1873 and 1874. They were primarily fought in the Ashanti Empire, a potent state in West Africa that offered a significant obstacle to British attempts to colonize the area. Among other African empires at the time, the Ashanti were renowned for their military strength. They used successful guerrilla warfare techniques against the well-trained British forces, soundly beating them in the first two conflicts. But in the end, it was Britain's superior firepower that brought about the end of the conflict, which was then followed by a number of treaties establishing British dominance over the traffic in slaves, gold, and other vital commodities along Africa's west coast. 8. The 80 Years' War lasted 80 years. The 80 Years' War, fought between the Spanish Empire and the Dutch Republic between 1568 and 1648, lasted 80 years, as the name clearly indicates. Due to the fact that the fight was sparked by political and religious conflicts in the Spanish-controlled Netherlands, it is also frequently referred to as the War of Dutch Independence from Spain. Philip II's repressive and discriminating policies were a major factor in the revolution of the Dutch Protestants, led by William I of Orange, against the Catholic Spanish Empire. In an effort to keep their hold over the area and repress Protestantism, Spanish authorities started a war that would eventually engulf all of Europe in a bloody conflict known as the 30 Years' War. While Spain had some early victories, the conflict shifted in the Dutch's favor after France entered the conflict, leading to the official recognition of the Dutch Republic as an independent state of Europe. The Peace of Munster, which brought an end to both the 30 and 80 Years' Wars in 1648, was a turning point in Europe's larger struggle for political and religious freedom. 7. The Anglo-Afghan Wars lasted 80 years. The term, Anglo-Afghan Wars, refers to a trilogy of wars that took place between Afghanistan and Great Britain between 1839 and 1919. They were a part of the Great Game, a larger geopolitical conflict between the British and Russian empires that started in 1830. In order to defend their interests in India, British soldiers engaged Afghan forces under the command of several emperors, including Dost Muhammad Khan and Sher Ali Khan, throughout the protracted struggle. Major battles were fought in towns like Kabul and Kandahar, where the majority of the fighting occurred. Similar to how they did with their previous colonies, the British formed powerful alliances and diplomatic relationships with local Afghan forces, which helped them win some early battles and hold onto a sizable portion of the country during the initial invasion. That would soon change though, as the disastrous 1842 British retreat from the country nearly wiped out the whole army. The British government was forced to sign an armistice handing up control over Afghanistan's foreign affairs by the time it was over in 1919. 6. Sengoku period lasted 101 years. One of the most turbulent periods in Japanese history was the Sengoku period. The Nin War, a conflict between rival samurai clans across the nation, started it all off about 1467. Local daimyos, or feudal lords, with their mighty armies were the main combatants as they fought to fill the power vacuum left by the weakened and ultimately defeated Ashikaga shogunate. As a result of the countless battles, sieges, and skirmishes that took place during this time in Japan, the country was divided into a number of small fiefdoms ruled by a few hundred warlords within around a century. Oda Nobunaga became the most powerful daimyo at the conclusion of the Sengoku period in 1568, but his successor Toyotomi Hideyoshi, finally reunified Japan into a single state. 5. Australian frontier wars lasted 146 years. When British ships arrived in Australia in 1788, the colonial frontier wars broke out, pitting the untrained, unprepared local populace against the skilled, battle-hardened Imperial British Army. Despite these disadvantages, the struggle persisted for nearly another 150 years, claiming the lives of as many as 60,000 native people, according to some estimates. The time, like other parts of the world, was characterized by ferocious violence against both people and military objectives, which led to the nearly total eradication of the indigenous population as a result of things like conflict or disease. One estimate places the native population's decline between 1788 and 1900 at almost 90%. 4. The Crusades lasted 196 years. By the 11th century, Islamic armies had overrun most of the ancient Christian world, including significant areas like Palestine, Syria, Egypt, and Anatolia. The Crusades are the military battles that were organized by troops gathered and supported by Christian nations to reclaim the areas surrounding the Holy Land between 1095 and 1291. Initial triumphs of the campaigns included the establishment of a free Christian state in Palestine and Syria. However, those triumphs were ultimately undone by the strong Muslim forces that were then developing in the area, proving that they were no match for the burgeoning Islamic supremacy. After the Ninth Crusade's failure and the Muslim seizure of Acre in 1291, the war started to wind down. 3. Yaqui Wars lasted 396 years. The brutal civil conflict between New Spain and the Native American Yaqui people lasted from 1533 to 1929. Later, Mexico took part. Violence during the Yaqui Wars was sporadic but fierce, frequently leading to summary killings and other atrocities against the native population. The invasion of native territories by European and Mexican settlers, especially the Yaqui ancestral grounds, was the main cause of the conflict. Fighting was confined to the state of Sonora, when the Mexican government engaged the Yaqui using both military and private troops, employing strategies like scorched earth and manhunts to pacify the populace. The rebels' fighting capacity was severely hampered by the forcible deportations, which ultimately resulted in their defeat in 1929. 2. Roman-Persian Wars lasted 680 years. The Persian-Roman Wars, which raged from 53 BC to 627 AD, were undoubtedly one of the wars that lasted the longest in history. It would eventually be fought between the Roman Republic, Roman Empire, and Byzantine Empire in the west, and the Parthian and Sassanid powers in the east. It far survived the powers who launched it, Rome and Parthia. Due to the conflict's enormous size and length, which stretched from Mesopotamia in the Middle East to the Transcaucasus in Eastern Europe, it has been compared to the Great War of Antiquity. The Roman-Persian Wars ensured that neither the Byzantine Empire nor Persia had the means to combat one another, even though neither side gained any significant territorial gains. 1. Reconquista lasted 770 years. The Islamic takeover of lands on the Iberian Peninsula, particularly the destruction of the Visigothic Kingdom of Hispania in 711, led to a nearly 770-year-long era of conflict known as the Reconquista. It was fought between Iberian Muslim party known as the Moors, who founded different Islamic nations in the region's south, and Christian kingdoms in the north, notably Castile, Aragon, and Portugal. The conflict was motivated primarily by religious zeal and territorial expansion, despite the fact that there were several intricate political and economic causes behind it. With Christian forces gradually moving south throughout the centuries, the Reconquista advanced steadily but gradually. The last Muslim bastion, the Emirate of Granada, fell in 1492, marking the end of the period. The Christian troops who overcame the. We hope you enjoyed our guide to the longest wars in history. Please subscribe as it helps our channel grow and allows us to give you better videos.